Hello and welcome to week 7 and a little bit of an update. I was on vacation this last weekend in New Hampshire and my wife slipped, fell, and broke her leg in 3 places. Her ankle, top of her tibia, the bottom of her tibia. Anyway, we're waiting for surgery at this point, so a little out of it right now, so bear with me. Here we are in week 7, PSY200 History of Psychology, and we're continuing our discussion about functionalism and looking at some of the, we're looking at the antecedents, and now you see a pattern, in terms of the development of ideas. And functionalism really, in this chapter, we really bring to a head the influence of Charles Darwin. Essentially, our behavior functions in a way to allow for our species to survive. Now, that concept really caught on in the science world, especially by a person by the name of Herbert Spencer, who in fact is the originator of the term survival of the fittest. And he was not talking about individual species. He was applying the theory of evolution and natural selection to the development of societies over history. A very, very different perspective. Now, that survival of the fittest, Herbert Spencer's book, was on Hitler's shelf. One of the books that very much influenced him, along with, I'm not going to get his name, but Charles Darwin's cousin, who wrote on eugenics. That book was also on Hitler's shelf, and said these ideas taken too far really led to the idea of social Darwinism, or the purposeful engineering of the human genome to produce a superior being. And, well, we all know where that went. Now, that said, we're going to have a discussion about that, about social Darwinism and the survival of the fittest. In the context of this class, we know that there's very substantial negative history associated with these concepts. Yet at the same time, we see these things happening in our society. Like if I was in the dating world and I was looking for a wife to have kids with, I would select that individual for intelligence, good looks, perspectives in the future, good values and whatnot. And isn't that a way, it's natural, but isn't that sort of a natural way of engaging in natural selection, or, social Darwinism? Survival of the fittest is also, we apply that to the business world. The business world, the more savvy, the more creative, the more enlightened a business is, the more likely they are to survive. We see these things in their kind of negative and positive lights. So I want to have a discussion about those things. And then the quiz has 2 questions where we're transitioning still from what we were talking about in terms of structuralism, and I'll review that in just a little bit, and functionalism. Which approach do you think makes the most sense? Perhaps you can tell me one instance where one is structuralism is one that makes more sense, and another one where functionalism makes more sense. You don't have to pigeonhole your particular opinion about those 2. These are still 2 very viable ways of interacting with psychological knowledge. Then the second question, I ask you to describe something, going back a little bit, describe something, personal experience, again, using that structuralist perspective. Now, functionalist survival at this point, that's kind of what we're looking at, the function of society, the function of behavior in order to advance the species and benefit me. There's a lot, you're going to see where behaviorism is going to come in there, seeking rewards, the personal, that's right along that line of thinking. We're going to be getting into behaviorism pretty soon here. Now we go back to structuralism, and we're actually looking at sort of the mechanics, the physics of psychology. And the 4 points that I made in the previous chapter, from the structural perspective, we reduce conscious process to the simplest components. We determine laws by which these components are associated with one another. We connect those elements to physiological processes in the brain and otherwise. And we measure things like the quality, intensity, duration, and clarity of these experiences. You see how that's a lot of measure. And we're talking about that notion of the thoughts coming out of the German society that was very into measuring and precision. And you can see that coming. Now we have this new one, Charles Darwin, kind of an English guy, I think. And he's coming along and saying functionalism. You know, it's okay to understand that these are both viable. It's okay to understand the structure of human experience, but bottom line, we need to know why it is here, and why do we do it? You know, the big why. Why do we engage in certain behaviors? So I'm really trying to talk about these ideas so we can see the change of ideas as they occur over time. But yet, all of those, structuralism is still with us. Functionalism is still with us. Introspection is still with us. I mean, all of these, you think about insight therapy. You know, one of the leading aspects of therapy right now, we're leading methodologies in therapy, it really has to do with introspection, journaling, meditating, you know, all of those things. It's this whole kicking all the way back to introspection. So none of these are sort of like, you know, dead-end trails that just went nowhere. They remain with us. Well, maybe phrenology, you know, the bumps on your head to determine personality, that's pretty much gone. But aside from that, almost everything is still with us. But these ideas morph into, and you're going to see functionalism, basically the survival of the species as an instinctual nature, transforming itself into behaviorism, which is an individual benefit, species benefit, individual benefit, and we move from survival to learning theories. How do I learn on an individual basis? Yet they're all connected. So that's this week's work. All is well in my family. We're contending with what we're doing and the other things that are going on. So I'm gonna kick into grading. I'm back on the tracks and hopefully catch up with grading very shortly here. So have a great week. And I will see you next time. Take care.